Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to our Emmy Contender series. My name is Yvonne Villareal and I cover television. We're here today with Eric Bana, who starred in Bravo's Dirty John, the scripted series which is based on a print series and podcast from the Los Angeles Times, chronicled the real-life whirlwind romance between a wealthy businesswoman and a charming con man. Bana portrayed said con man, John Meehan. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What is it like to be in the throes of the thing that created the thing you're starring in?
Was kind of weird because I, finished this series and went back home and immediately went into pre-production on a film, and so I kind of left John behind very in terms of distance and in terms of mental headspace. But then he went to air in Australia, and I kind of relived the whole thing all over again.
What's been the reaction you're getting? Because I imagine before women, when they would approach you, it was all starry-eyed, and now I feel like there's apprehension, but maybe not.
I haven't been here at all, so I haven't really had a chance to gauge that. But people want to talk about it. They feel the need to say something without really thinking about what they're going to say first. It's kind of odd, but so a lot of engagement, a lot of engagement.
So what was it that struck you when you first heard about this project? I know for Alexandra Cunningham, who's the showrunner of the series, when she first sat down with it, it was the print story, and she was sort of hooked on the photos, like that hooked her. When you got wind of this project and sat down with it, what was it that struck you?
Well, my introduction was through the podcast. My agent called me and told me about this adaptation. So before we continued, I just said, look, I'm just going to go and listen to the whole thing and let's talk again tomorrow. So that was my kind of port of entry, and listened to all 6 episodes and was kind of blown away. And I don't know if there was just one specific facet of the story that hooked me in, or if it was John's personality or the complications of his personality, or just, selfishly as an actor, that opportunity. So probably a combination of all of it. I think it was a bit of a perfect storm for me, but it was a very visceral reaction straight away. I was like, I'm playing that guy. He's mine.
He's mine. What is it about the podcast that you think sort of appealed to the masses?
Well, I think there's a great, I like the structure of it. I thought it was structured really well, and I think Chris did a great job of just telling a really fascinating, true story in a really compelling way. And I think, the fact that I was hearing a story unlike any story I'd heard before as a man, I was like, this is really interesting, this is fascinating. And I had delved into sociopathic and psychopathic behaviour before in other characters, obviously, but this one was very unique, and it was very unique to his behaviour towards Deborah. I think it was that sort of drew me in.
And Gofford's voice.
And Chris's lovely voice. Yeah.
So with a project like this, or playing a character like this, I imagine the research is a little different. Well, first, when you're playing a sociopath, I feel like you're not trying to play a sociopath. What research went into this character that was maybe different from other ones?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a dangerous thing to try and play. I knew that I had the luxury of the material, because I think, as an actor, it's always dangerous when you see an actor trying to play a psycho, trying to play a sociopath, like as an actual performance choice, and you need the behaviour to underpin the evidence that that's who they are. But at the same time, there are some things that I thought that would be interesting, and that in terms of behaviour that I wanted to portray in John that would help people buy that dynamic. So a lot of the research was stuff that I'd already gotten into in other areas during my life, and then a lot of more specific stuff that was relevant to John and his background. And Alex was, an incredible wealth of information and super helpful, and so was Jeff, our director. And it was really that dynamic of just sitting down and long chats with Jeff all day, every day on set talking about how we could make John who he was and then make the character more interesting than who he was.
So I imagine like with a true crime story, one of the challenges not to play the end in the beginning. Did you find that was the case here? Like you don't want to telegraph it too much, or what was your approach?
My approach was just to really commit to what was happening in that particular episode, because I think that character is someone who is so in the moment every second of the day, because it's always a game and they're always on and they're always got a mask on, and it's a different mask for whoever he's with. And so to me it was always about just whatever he was doing at that particular moment in time. I mean, obviously I had the benefit of knowing the series arc and knowing exactly what the structure of all 8 episodes was going to be and where we were going and where we needed to get to and so forth. But it was fun.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Tell me why.
Well, I think because there was so much that I wanted to play in him that was very specific. And Jeff and I kind of enjoyed that. We enjoyed the darkness of it, and we just kind of embraced it and tried to. It sounds weird, but try to have fun with it in our own way, and not be afraid to kind of go to places that might be too twisted, like just go for that. And
there's a lot of dark humor too, which
which probably came out of those conversations, and not being afraid of that. We didn't want to sort of talk about it publicly before it came out, obviously, but that was something that we weren't afraid of, that we knew that for some people there would be some dark humour in there, because that's human behaviour. There's no way around that. But so working on that was challenging, but it was also really enjoyable. You know.
I think I read somewhere, and maybe you might have told me this when we spoke last time, but you felt dirty playing him.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't feel like Prince Charming playing him when I went home.
Right.
You know.
Was it something that like was hard to shake, or you just sort of
Yeah. I'm not saying I felt guilty in my day-to-day life after I rap, but there is a place that you have to go to in your head in terms of manipulation to play that character, and it has to be very comfortable and second nature. So it's only natural that sort of hangs around a bit. So it would, and it still does. It still kind of messes with my mind a little bit. It makes you question a lot of things. It makes you question a lot of your behaviour, other people's behaviour. You know, what is the real motivation behind any good deed that anyone does?
Right.
You know, like that sort of thing. It's sort of like, it does make you question a lot of things. Was my reaction just then that of a psychopath or that of a normal person? Because, or a sociopath would have done what I just did. Am I a sociopath?
Wow.
I don't know. Like, so that thought process does
filter in. How about, I mean, when you're playing a villain, you hear actors often say you try to see, or you try to empathize with him on some level, or find ways that you do relate to them. But with this character, were you able to do that? Was that even the goal, or is the goal just to try to understand the behavior?
I realised early on that it was going to be a bit of a waste of time, me and becoming friends. So to me, the most important thing was to come up with a believable representation of that character type. That was my number one priority. Because I felt that unless we really believed him and he was convincing, we can't really stay with Deborah. We're not going to be able to forgive her hanging around. And I knew the only way we could do that was by me doing my best for him to be convincing at the bad stuff that he did, and the manipulation and the games and the love and the affection and the attention and the focus and all that sort of stuff. So that was my priority, and I didn't feel like I had to really endear myself to who he was to do that. In some ways, it was kind of nice to have a little bit of non-reverence for him. So I've had a lot of that. I've had a lot of reverence for characters I've played and a lot of respect for them. And in this case, it was more of a respect for the opportunity rather than the who he was. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people struggled trying to understand how Deborah didn't see the signs or how she could allow herself to let this situation escalate. So I wonder for you, not that like you're a doctor or anything, what do you think was at play here? Like how much of it was him just being masterful at manipulation, and how much of it was her psychology, like her background, that led her to that point too?
I think it's a bit of a perfect storm, a bit of a perfect match in that sense. And I think it's easy to be judgmental, but at the same time, I think, you know, the more you delve into that and you understand that guys like John are experts at picking their prey, the easier it is to understand. I felt far more judgmental of Deborah when I listened to the podcast than I was of her as we were shooting the series, because by that stage I had well and truly come to understand more the powers of manipulation,
right,
and how emotionally destructive these types of people can be, and it enabled me to understand her journey a lot better and have respect for it, and hopefully that's one of the good things that has come out of the series, and I know it is, because I have a lot of people approach me and say that, you know, their friend was in a similar situation, and this helps open up, you know, channels of communication a lot easier in the future for a lot of people and so forth. So I do have a different viewpoint now than I did when I listened to the podcast.
Because that's what's interesting. I mean, it's an extreme case, obviously, like the turn of events, how things ended, but it is something that women grapple with a lot. That fear of what can happen when, you know, there's rejection with a man or something like that. Death is always a possibility, and I think a lot of people don't like take that too seriously sometimes, but it's, you know, something we all deal with.
Yeah, and even if you go, you know, further away from the extreme, obviously just being in a manipulative, emotionally abusive relationship is terrible, you know. So, yeah, like I say, it's something that I understand a lot more now than I did beforehand.
How about, I mean, early in your career, I read an interview where you talk about...
Uh-oh. How early? What did I say?
Let's bring out the words.
Delete.
That a lot of times, like when you're selecting a project, it's based on, you know, the director I'll be working with. And in TV, it's so much of a writer's medium. How was that to sort of navigate for the first time? Like talking with Alexandra and her vision being paramount, and also the collaboration with the director.
It's still extremely important to me. Yeah, I have an instinct when I meet people as to how I think that relationship's going to be, and I had a wonderful instinct when I met everyone involved on this project before I signed on. And I really felt like Jeff and I would work really well together, which is exactly what happened. So no, it's very, very important. I discovered early on that I do my best work in a collaborative environment. So that's something I've seeked in, you know, for many, many, many years and have found, luckily. So yeah, Jeffrey was no exception. I really felt like he'd be a great person to collaborate with, as was Alex, and it was a really great team.
I know you've been offered TV projects in the past. What was it about this one at this time? How was this the perfect storm for you?
Well, the practicality of it not being an ongoing series meant that it was just something I could actually contemplate. So there's been a lot of stuff over the years that I've enjoyed and could consider, but then couldn't because I live in Australia, and signing for a long, long time is the age my kids was not ever an option. So limited series really does appeal to me, both as a consumer and as an actor. I'm a little bit scared of long-term relationships with anyone other than my wife. So this really appealed to me, and purely and simply the character and the storyline. It was just kind of everything. It really was a bit of a you know, perfect opportunity in many, many ways. More so than anything else that I'd been approached with.
What was your relationship like with TV growing up?
very healthy. Yeah, I was allowed to watch a lot of television as a young person. Spent a lot of time with my grandparents and my uncles, and all of whom led me astray. So, you know, it was a good, healthy relationship with
What were the
TV.
shows you liked?
Well, there was a lot of Australian drama on back then, a lot of adult Australian drama and cop shows and things, but then there was a lot of American product as well. So it was a bit of a mixture. Yeah, a lot of comedy, a lot of, you know, not so much soap, but, you know, drama, cop shows, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So what led you to comedy? Like, I think there are some people that know that that's how you got your start, but some that don't. Like, how did it sort of happen for you?
It just kind of evolved, really. It was, you know, I used to do a lot of stupid stuff when I was at school, and a lot of impressions and things like that. And then I got into the workforce and was working at a bar, and someone said, you know, the stuff that you are doing with staff, you should be doing on stage. And I was like, I'm not a comedian. It's like for Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor are comedians, no one else, you know.
Right.
So I just kind of, I was led gently down a path and taken to a few stand-up shows, and realised that not everyone was absolutely brilliant, and they were being paid, and I was like, this is outrageous. I'm at least as good as one of those people. And then it just kind of went from there. I did tryout spots, and then was very quickly working, and before I knew it, I'd given up my day job and was, you know, touring as a full-time comic. And
What was your style? Was it stream of conscious or?
it was very storyteller-esque.
Okay.
So Richard Pryor was my hero. So it was very much, you know, like 5-10 minute blocks of sort of storytelling and taking on characters and that sort of thing. It wasn't, you know, abusive with the audience engagement and, you know, where are you from? And all that was like my least favourite sort of stuff. And then I went obviously from there into sketch comedy, which was where I really sort of found my feet, both as a performer and as a writer. I really enjoyed writing sketch. So that was my kind of happy place for many, many years, you know, before
Do you remember the first time you got heckled?
Yeah,
That's like
vaguely, but for some reason I had a really good run with hecklers. I don't know why.
Okay,
but,
well that's good.
Yeah. Like I said, my style didn't really invite it much, and I didn't. Some people crave it and they really want to get into it with hecklers, and I was kind of the opposite.
So being on Full Frontal, what was that experience like? And like, do you find, like, how do you view the world in like that type of like sketches?
Yeah, still.
So how does that work?
It works like this. I see someone do something and I think how much fun it would be to play that person. I watch someone on TV and I think how much fun it would be to take the mickey out of that person, and that doesn't get turned off ever.
Wow.
And so I see most of my day in, you know, little 3-minute sketches, and I do absolutely nothing about it.
Why not?
Because I got it pretty good.
True.
You know, I love acting, and I love acting in movies, and I love doing Dirty John.
What do your kids think about it? Like, do you express it at home maybe?
Yeah, and they're very similar. They're very funny, and both very, very good with accents and impressions and stuff. So it's yeah, and I think it's just the way my brain worked. You know, I mean, obviously you write your own material when you're a stand-up, and then in sketch comedy, that was and I loved working with a really small group of people who got my groove, and we wrote really well together, and it was the time of my life. Honestly, it was like the best, most fun kind of 6 years of my life was that period. Yeah.
But you've never hosted SNL.
No.
Would you, or you would actively not?
I have no huge desire to, and I can't explain why. I don't know if it's just because I've done so much of that stuff that there'd be nothing new in that for me. And I don't have a good answer for that. I know it's probably something I should have done by now, but I haven't, and I can't guarantee that that'll ever happen.
That it'll ever happen. Did your family come out while you were shooting Dirty John?
They came for a couple of visits, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they went, "What has happened to you? We're out of here. This is not fun at all. This is not fun, Dad." No, I'm joking.
There's I think it's episode 4, where there's like a turn that you have to give that I would imagine was a hard one, where she's sort of catching on about things. And he's got to convince her to stay. You're in the hospital bed, I think. Yeah. What was going through your mind? Like, did you find that a challenging scene to pull off?
I knew going in, and I felt like if I look at this literally, this is going to be impossible, but I have to just do this. Connie's great as Deborah. She's going to walk in not believing anything, and I have to make her believe everything by the time she leaves this room. And I just broke it down to that. It's like, there was so much in the arc of the storyline that if you looked at it logically made no sense and seemed impossible. But then when I just got in the room with Connie and we would connect as those characters, I could feel the manipulation. I could feel the dynamic. I could feel what I needed to do. I could feel what she was prepared to listen to and not. And that was always a great feeling, that dynamic, and I think it worked really well. And so obviously I was always very reliant on where she was coming from as Deborah and what she was bringing. And we would have conversations. Sometimes we would talk in detail beforehand, sometimes we wouldn't. And so she was great in that respect. So I had the luxury of knowing that at the end of the day I'd be in the scene with Connie, and her version of Deborah was something that I could work with, and I'd come at it from that angle rather than I'm gonna have her convinced by the end of the scene. You know, it's like, no, go in thinking that you got to really work for it. She's not convinced. We're a minute in.
Yeah.
This is a 9-minute, 14-page thing, and I'm going to pace myself. I'm going to get her there by the end. I'm going to have to work my butt off all the way through to have her not run by the end of this.
What do you think? Do you think he was good at manipulation or acting, or like, in hindsight, do you see some, I don't know, not holes in it, but how did he get away with this? Because sometimes it seems sloppy, but he still managed.
Yeah, I think it's hard for us to know, because I think unless you're in the company of someone, and I always give the example of how many times have you been in a situation with a friend where they've done something that annoys you, or you're going to get together and they're going to do something that you know is going to drive you crazy. And you have this internal monologue, you know what? The next time he does that, I'm gonna think.
I'm leaving.
No, I'm gonna say something.
Oh, okay.
And this is what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say this. And then you get in the room with the person and they do the thing that drives you crazy, and you say nothing. And that's just with normal people. So what do you think it's got to be like with someone who intimidates you, who already has an emotional control of you because of your own need that they're filling, and then on top of that they got their own agenda, and hey, really well practiced.
Right.
This is not his first gig. So I think when you take all those things into account, it becomes easier to understand.
What was it like working with Connie? Did you find that you have different acting styles, and how did you sort of meet in the middle with things?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if we had acting styles. I tend not to notice too much what other people's acting styles are, but I think we had a similar attitude in that we took it seriously but not too seriously, and it was playful. And then if something wasn't working, we could usually work it out really quickly, and have the freedom to say what we wanted and try something different. So we were both really open from that perspective, and I think that really helped. So no, it was a great working relationship. Yeah.
Did her nails ever get stuck to you? Because she had press-on nails.
That would come off occasionally. We'd lose 30 seconds every now and then. Let's be honest.
I always love that.
Little time lost to the nails are a little higher maintenance than the hair, I think.
Yeah.
The hair was pretty good. The nails, that was another story.
And she was always like messing with them. I'm like, what's going on? I thought they were real, like
Right.
acrylic, but they were press on. We got a question from a fan. Josiah asks, you've had a lot of work since then, but how often does someone ask you about the castle?
Oh, well, I don't know about ask about, but definitely run a quote by me.
Oh,
you know,
really?
that happens a lot. You know. But yeah, it's a film that still holds up as very funny today and was a lot of fun to be a part of. So yeah, I always love it when someone comes up with a castle quote. Yeah.
That's good. How about we have another one that asks, if you could have met John Meehan, obviously he's dead, but if you could have, would you have wanted to, and what would you have asked him?
I probably wouldn't have been able to resist. I generally find that when I get that opportunity, I tend not to have a list of, go-to questions. What's more important for me is just to sit
with them,
say nothing, and just observe. Because I think people reveal themselves more in that manner, and I've had the opportunity to do that a couple times. So I probably would have just tried to get a sense of his energy and manipulation, which probably wouldn't have taken long to get a sense of.
Yeah. How about the sort of epic scene, which is the fight? I feel like maybe you're used to doing fight scenes with men, and here you were with a young actress, Julia Garner, who's amazing. What was that like? What went into shooting that?
Julia was absolutely fantastic, both as an actress, but as well physically. So her physicality during that fight she was great to work with. I didn't have to make any specific adjustments or anything like that. We had some rehearsal time, not a lot, but enough. And she just picked it up immediately. She took to it like she'd done it a million times. The choreography was very, very specific, both to Tara's recollection of what actually happened. And so the stunt crew were able to basically create something that they felt was very, very close to the real thing. And obviously we had the benefit, spoiler alert, but obviously of wounds to be able to map out a lot of it.
One right here, it's just...
Yeah. So
cringeworthy.
we had a good amount of time to do that sequence right towards the end of the shoot. She was a rock star.
How was the dog?
The dog was fantastic.
Really?
I was so happy that we were able to do what we needed to do with the dog. The dog was great and really, came at my leg and tore things off it and number of times. So that was great. I just assumed that we were going to have to fake a lot of that, and then they
I thought so too, yeah.
we were rehearsing. They're like, brought this dog in. They're like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put this thing on your leg, and we've trained it to go after you, but not actually bite your calf, and it's going to pull you. And like, let me spend some time with this dog before the take. Hello, this is skin. You're not going to grab that. You're going to grab the flare. So no, the dog was fantastic.
A well-behaved co-star.
Wonderful. Thoroughly recommend that dog to anyone that needs to do a fight scene.
And that was the scene, was that the scene where Deborah and Tara and Jacqueline were there for?
No.
To observe?
No. I only had Tara on set right towards the very end, but no, we were very careful about that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and I actually didn't want to meet
them.
Most of them until we'd sort of finished.
So what was it like when you did meet them? Was that at the premiere party? Because I know they were there.
Yeah.
Was that there?
It was, yeah.
How was that?
It was really nice, actually, because it's that thing of what's different to normal. I don't know how to explain it, because, part of you is in awe of what they've been through, and you just want to give them a hug, and then you realise that, that you're playing the person that represents, so much bad memories for them. So even when I met Tara the first time in the makeup trailer, I could see it was you know, was not just a normal thing where you're just meeting someone. It was something that was different to her. And I think having an Australian accent actually really helped sort of distance
yeah.
myself from John. But no, it was wonderful, and I got to meet his first wife and his children, and yeah, so it was lovely.
All right, we're going to wrap things up with a lightning round, if you don't mind.
How do I do this? What happens?
So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and if you can respond into camera 3.
Okay, all right.
This might be hard. I don't know if you watch too much TV, but we're going to ask this anyway. What performer on TV today totally blows you away, and it can't be one of your co-stars from Dirty John?
Ooh, okay, everyone on Schitt's Creek. Love Schitt's Creek.
Last show you binge watched?
Last show I binge watched was Afterlife, Ricky Gervais.
Are you a Game of Thrones fan? I was going to ask who's going to win Game of Thrones, but...
Haven't seen a single episode of Game of Thrones. I'm sorry.
What...
I take it personally. Like, there's stuff of mine that you haven't seen as well. So just, you know.
What classic TV show would you have loved to be on?
Classic TV show. I loved The Night Stalker when I was a kid, and I loved The Twilight Zone. Yeah.
That could happen now, though.
You know.
What's the worst job you've ever had, and it doesn't have to be acting?
I've had a lot of really crappy jobs, but I actually really quite enjoyed them as a young person. I would say pushing empty trolleys around the supermarket car park, but even then I had fun, you know. But I guess by the way we judge jobs, that's probably that was the worst.
How did you have fun with that job? Were you just like cruising down
you know, like trying to work out how many trolleys I could get in a row, pushing through that car park without actually crashing into a car.
Into a car, yes.
And then we got advanced. Then we had like the ropes, so you'd like tie them off so you could push like 50 at a time.
So do you have a greater appreciation when you're at the
when
grocery?
when I see someone collecting trolleys at the car park, like how many can you do? How many can you do without hitting someone the back of their heels as they try and enter?
Yes.
You know.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure talking
Thank you.
to you.
It's fun.
And for all you, if you want to see more of our Emmy chats, head over to elletimes.com.